Hello, everyone. This is Lekha. Um, so this is very weird, by the way, talking to myself on the screen. So I'm hoping I'm talking to people out there. Thanks for joining this session. It's actually an honor to have you come talk to me and listen to my story. I know we are calling it my tech journey. It's actually my journey. I just happen to be in the technical domain, so a lot of the stories will be pertaining to that. Um, so I'll just start off by just telling you a little bit about myself, and then we can. I thought I'll just share some stories, and if at the end of the session you get a little bit out of this, I'll be super happy. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy some of the pictures along the way. So I'm from Bangalore, so I'm actually sitting in Bangalore right now. I grew up in this house. I My parents are from Kerala, so we are a multicultural family. I moved to Seattle um, as part of Amazon after I finished my grad school. I finished my grad school in Georgia Tech. You could, in some ways, say that my tech journey probably began right here in my schooling days. So, when I was in, I remember the first time I wrote code. That was when I was 10 years old. My principal, I went to a local school close to my place here called Sudarshan Vidyamandar. She had a very progressive principal. I mean, she was probably one of my first role models. And we had a computer lab that she set up for everybody starting from fifth grade. And I remember falling in love, and I think that's how my sort of journey with tech began at that point in time. Since then, I have lived in all of these places at different points, and I think I have been very fortunate in just being able to, I guess, indulge my hobbies. So some of my hobbies include traveling. I love traveling. I think if I look back and as I prepared for this talk, and thanks for giving me that opportunity, by the way. As I prepared for this talk, I think one thing I was trying to figure out what made me who I am today. That it's been 20 years since I started working in this domain. I think books and travel have played a huge part in a lot of the decisions I have made along the way. Some of my favorite books that I've gone back to repeatedly is one is Charlie Munger. I don't know how many of you know Charlie Munger. He's Warren Buffett's sort of right hand man. He's written this book called Almanac, which is absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. The other one is Meditations by Aurelius. These are just two books. I also read a ton of historical romance fiction, by the way. So my interests vary, but travel is one thing that always gives me a lot of joy. So I've been to a lot of these places, and I thought I could use that as sort of the backdrop of some of my stories, the places I've gone, and what I learned from them. I think they sort of align as I grew in my career. In terms of work, I'm currently in Amazon Go. So I started with Amazon, like I was saying, after my grad school. After spending about 10 years in Seattle at Amazon in forecasting, my role sort of spanned multiple roles, but it was primarily in two big areas. One was supply chain, inventory management, and retail. So I started off as a forecasting analyst. In today's world, you would call them a data scientist. I loved what I was doing. I mean, I was an IC as an individual contributor for about 4.5 years. And then I moved into a management track. That first picture I showed you of my tech journey, which was a meandering path, it's actually the way down from Machu Picchu. It's actually that truly reflects how my journey has been over the last 20 years. It's not been a straight path at all. I have gone back and forth on a lot of things, and looking back, I think they've all been sort of great decisions for myself. Yeah, after 10 years, I moved to India to set up a team here in Amazon India, Amazon Bangalore. And then I quit Amazon the first time around 12 and a half years after my first phase because I wanted to find out what else was out there. And I found a lot of cool things. As in, I got an opportunity to work in Cape Town for 18 months to head the operations and customer service department of the first online e-commerce shop in South Africa. It is called Spree. They were recently bought over. They're part of the Naspers group in South Africa. For those of you who are aware of that. After that, I went back to boot camp. I wanted to go try out my data scientist jobs again. So I wrote, and it was fascinating. I mean, it was a brilliant break actually. So that's one thing I want to discuss later on. And then 3 years after I left Amazon, Amazon found me again. And 5 years ago, I joined the Amazon Go or physical stores technical organization. So we are the engineering organization that powers the Just Walkout experience. I don't know how many of you know about Amazon Go. It's actually a store that is powered by cameras and sensors where customers can walk in, pick up a product. We use a combination of sensors and ML slash deep learning to identify what item the customer has taken, who the customer is, how many of the items have been picked, and automatically charge the customer. So they basically can pick up and just walk out. So that's the experience that we want to bring. And no, we went live in UK yesterday or day before yesterday. So we are definitely expanding very rapidly. So that's what I am doing right now. So the rest of this, I just want to keep track of time. For the rest of this session, I wanted to take you through some of the questions I get asked and some of the lessons I have learned, in my journey. And I'm hoping at least some of it resonates with some of you, and if not, maybe we can cover other things in the Q&A at the end. So one question I get asked a lot. Pretty much every candidate asks me this question when I'm interviewing them and tell them that I've been here for this long is why do I stay at Amazon for this long? And my answer is actually twofold. One is not covered here. One is the people. I think the people at Amazon have been the most brilliant amongst everybody. I think that it may be true of other places too. But I have found that I am immensely challenged by the people around me. One of my favorite quotes from Charlie Munger, that the person I referred to a little while ago, is surround yourself with smarter and wiser people than yourself. Believe me, that's something that's like checked off at Amazon right from the get-go. And it just keeps like I mentioned that the second round was first 5 years ago, and the days have been incredibly full, right? So it's a very challenging environment. I think that keeps me going. The other very big reason that I think I am at Amazon is what we refer to as the leadership principles of Amazon. I think every big company has a set of core values that they adhere to. Amazon's leadership principles are sort of what defines the DNA of Amazon, and it's part of what every Amazonian sort of lives and breathes by in their day-to-day interactions. This is what we use to make decisions. This is what we use. This is what leaders use when they are leading people. The way we engage with our customers, when we make decisions about our customers, for our customers. This forms part of practically everything that we do. And when I read these principles, and this is something that that has evolved over time, but it hasn't really changed much since day one, as we said. And I think for anyone who reads some of these, and if it resonates with your own core values, I think it makes it very easy for you to survive in a culture that resonates with yourself. So when I look at every single one of them, they actually they define for me what common sense is, right? And I think that's something that I value highly. And I think that's what is made Amazon the way it is right now. And that's what I enjoy about working at Amazon. I'll just call out maybe a couple of specific leadership principles here that I think are peculiar to Amazon. I've seen some of the other core values, and I think this is what somewhat uniquely makes Amazon Amazon. One of them is this one. We have something called have backbone, disagree, and commit. I think this is also particularly pertinent in this audience, and I'm like I said, I'm talking to myself here, but I'm hoping that the audience is a lot of women, is what I was told. It's standing up for what you believe in, um, which is so we basically say that we don't want to compromise just for the sake of social cohesion. Actually, the words here actually reflect exactly what we do. It says respectfully challenge decisions when you disagree, even when doing so is uncomfortable or exhausting. Have conviction. and be tenacious. Do not compromise for the sake of social cohesion. And once a decision is determined, commit wholly to it. I think the second part is equally important as the first. But that this one leadership principle unblocks people when they are trying to bring out no, when there are new perspectives in action, and when people are trying to push for new ideas, and there are two different sides on the table. This doesn't say that you should fight forever. This is not fighting for your goal. This is actually saying, let's have a vigorous debate, let's learn from each other, and together we come out with something new, right? And but once you actually make that decision, you commit to it and you move on. The second part being equally important as the first. To me, this is actually one of my favorite ones. I use it a lot, actually, and the more I grow, I realize the more I use it in my day-to-day interactions. The other part about these leadership principles that I find fascinating is that this is I say I grew up at Amazon, right? So a lot of my personal choices also gets reflected in some of these principles. That's what I meant by saying the core values resonate with me personally. Right. If you look at some of these, no, the earn trust principle or R right a lot. In other words, don't be afraid of making mistakes. And if you make mistakes, learn from it, reflect on it, and then move on. These are all things that have made me what I am, even personally, not just professionally. And I think this is another reason why Amazon has been the right place for me. I thought I'll discuss a few sort of lessons I have learned for the next few minutes. I don't have time. So let's check how much time I have. All right. So the first one is this. Setting your own pace. I think if any of you out there are athletes, runners, or hikers, you probably know this, right? In any sport, you have to set your pace. You cannot actually walk at another person's pace. You'll be exhausted. You won't actually reach your goal, even if you think you're running. And even if you do, you're probably hurting yourself. So this picture is actually from my trek to Machu Picchu. This was my first solo sort of trip a long time ago, and I remember actually coming up with this phase in my I also write journal. I also journal, and I remember this was one of the epiphanies I had after that trek that I did. It was a 3-day trek, and I was traveling with 8 strangers who became friends by the end of the journey. But it started off as strangers, and they were all very fit. They were all like Scandinavians and runners, hikers, and this was my first hike, the first really long hike. And what I realized was after the first day, when I was trying to keep up with them and I used to try and catch up, I was getting tired very quickly, and I wasn't really enjoying it. I wasn't really enjoying this ridiculously magnificent scenery that was surrounding me. I was just trying to keep up. By the second day, I actually, the guide who was with me told me, like, you're going to catch up. The important thing is you enjoy what you're actually getting into. This is not something you do on a daily basis. So I started setting up my own. I basically took that advice to heart, and what I then realized was that I was almost exactly 30 minutes away from them at any point in time, and I was enjoying the journey the entire time, right? And we sort of set a rhythm. They would wait for me after a few miles. I would reach them 30 minutes later, and we kept going, and it worked out beautifully. So in my career as well, I've realized that that's true for me, at least personally. I feel like a lot of people get hung up on, I guess, ladder climbing, for want of a better word, or reaching, or get stuck on peer pressure. I think instead of enjoying what you're doing, I'm not saying that growing is not important. It is, right? You have to. I mean, a part of, we could have an entirely different discussion on how to make sure that you're actually growing and getting promoted in a career as well. So I'm never going to belittle that. That's important, but getting stressed out about it, or not or letting your own ignoring what is right for you in the face of what you feel somebody else is doing, I think that's what, like I said, hurts you in the long run. You don't want to get to a place earlier than you are ready for it, and I think that there's a value in that, and experience actually does count. At least, again, this is all personal stories. It was what I found for myself. So when I actually, for instance, when I told you my trip back to India the first time, I made the trip. It was a very non sort of non-traditional decision, I guess. Not everybody would make a decision at that point in my career to come back, move back to India, because it was in terms of the a classic career growth. It was moving back and starting again. But it was one of the best decisions I made ever, because one, it gave me the time that I had at that point in time. I had the freedom to spend time with my family here, but more importantly, gave me an opportunity that I would have never gotten otherwise. I got an opportunity to set up a team from scratch in a different country. I know that India is a place where I grew up, but I had never worked here for real, right? I've worked here for a short period of time, but it was not really my entire work career had been in the US at that point in time. So it was actually getting used to a new culture here, and it was challenging, it was exhilarating, it was rewarding, and it just sort of kicks you back in again. And I think that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made my decision to say, you know what, this is what is important for me now, and I'll get back to my climbing the ladder at a different point in time. And then I quit 3 years later. I got this again amazing opportunity in Cape Town. I met um, an incredibly wonderful set of people. I got to work in a place that I would have never worked in before. I got exposed to a culture that I'd never been exposed to before. It was in every way imaginable the right decision for me. Maybe not the right decision for everyone, but I think the point of the story is you set your own sort of pace and your own story, and it'll turn out okay. And I think you'll find magic at the other end of the door if you just make that decision. I think this is the same thing. It's sort of related, sort of combine the two stories. When you make a decision, own it. The boomerang was saying that I got a chance to come back to Amazon despite the decision I made. A lot of, I mean, I didn't go back. I didn't leave expecting to come back. But once I am back, I've been loving it. So it's sometimes your career allows you U-turns. I think you shouldn't be afraid of making your own choices and making your own mistakes. I think both are equally important. I think failure is inevitable. I think the more failures you have, the more you learn. I'm not saying go walk into a ditch open-eyed, but at least don't expect that everything will be perfect all the time, and don't be too, like, the safer you are, the I think you don't learn as much uh, as when you take a few risks here and there. But whatever decision it is, own it, right? Don't. It can go one way or the other, but make it your own. Make it yours. I mean, it's a famous quote, right? It's like if you want to make a change happen, be the change you want to be, and I think that's actually true. I think that's what I found wherever I went, and the fact that I have been able to. So every single time I've made a decision that seemed contrary. Like I think the place when I actually had to set up an engineering team from scratch in India, what I learned was something that the opportunity I got to set up a team here was not something that I was getting when I was in Seattle. I would have gotten different opportunities maybe, but this exposed me to a way of working in a country that I had not been exposed to before, which has actually helped me in every single step of the way. I actually said that in a very in a humorous moment, actually, right? That moving to India taught me how to drive stick shift again, literally. Like I wasn't comfortable stick shift before, which actually was supremely useful in Cape Town, because Cape Town, all the cars are stick shift by default. So I wouldn't have been able to get that. If not, I wouldn't have been able to get it comfortably, at least. I mean, harder. So yeah, so you never know what works out and what doesn't. But at least in my experience, everything sort of builds up, and you don't really lose much by taking a few risks. All right. So this one, I think if there's nothing else you get out of this talk, I hope you get this one. I think as women, not even as women primarily, but even otherwise, I think in your career, um, having I have been extremely what do you call lucky to have champions, allies, sponsors in the form of family, in the form of people who worked with me and who I worked for. And I think that's actually been one reason where I am why I am where I am today. I remember a time maybe 2 years into my career at Amazon when I actually walked into my manager's office and I told him I'm not doing well. I don't think I'm going to fit in here. I want to leave. And I think this was this, this was when I was going through a rough patch personally as well. So I thought that I wasn't giving my all to Amazon, and not Amazon really. Like I was no, I was like I was saying, I was a data scientist. I was building models that was enjoyable, but I always thought I could do more. So when I actually told him that, he could have easily taken me at my word, but I think he was probably one of my first obvious champions at Amazon. And I remember him asking me, no, why do you think you're not good enough? And he sat me down and told me why I was. And he actually, no, the that conversation was pivotal, I guess, in my sort of journey at Amazon, right? So if it was somebody else who might have taken me at my word and let me go, my life would be different. I think, and I've had champions like that at Amazon all the way through, and he was the first one. And there was one more. There are a few people, a handful of people who have, and I think they know who they are, but they have been, they have sort of supported me during rough patches, guided me in the right direction. It began there. There was another, then another. I think every so often you hit these patches where your sort of your roads are you're trying to figure out which road to pick, and having a group of champions and sponsors along the way who you can reach out to always helps. And I think if you are early in your career, building that network, I think is very is I would say is a critical path and a part of your growth. I think it really helps you um, like get your perspective in shape. Sometimes you don't see your own blind spots, and having someone else point it out to you is always healthy. So for me, that has been one thing that I found I'm very grateful for at Amazon. I think it's always given me the community that I wanted personally. I think that's something that what I give, I now give back, in the sense that we have a sponsorship program within our org for all the women, where we try to identify sponsors for the women population. And every time I talk to my sponsees now, I find it amazing that just a conversation can change the tone of a person's day. And you're doing it, and you're basically just imparting what you have learned along the way, and you're learning along the way too. You're learning their stories, you're learning where they come from, and it's been a very rewarding experience in that sense. But having allies is I think we now hear allies, the word allies, all the time in the conversation around women. And I've seen that in action in my life, for sure. I think I have had a lot of I mean, in a long career, you hit a lot of times when you need somebody to just boost you up, and I think having those allies along that way is hugely helpful. I like this baby elephant picture. Elephants are one of my favorite animals too. I think they have a community that they built, which I thought was very cool, which is why I wanted to use this picture. There was this incident when when in this particular case, right after this photo was taken, the elephants lead to a lake where they actually help the small elephant cross this very deep lake, where these two elephants are pushing and pulling. So that's why I thought of this picture. It's, All right. This is another one. I think that this is actually another of the questions also I get asked, during interviews and in general, during my interaction with people about how I set my boundaries between work and home. And the filling your well is a phrase I borrowed from Oprah, actually. I'm a recent fan of Oprah. I know she's been around for a while, but recently I've been watching a lot of her old talk shows, and it's incredibly inspiring. But one thing that she says is very true. I think as particularly I think as women, as caregivers, as mothers, sisters, I think we tend to forget to take care of ourselves. We sometimes feel guilty about taking care of ourselves. I think it's very important to realize that if you don't have your well filled, there is nothing to give out from. Right? It's not healthy to dry up yourself. So taking the time to fill up your well is actually good in general, but it's a one thing that is in terms of compassion that you can do for yourself that will actually benefit everybody around you. Um, So personally for me, this is again one thing I've been no I've been very bad at not doing, and I think it's only the last few years that I have intentionally started. This trip was one of those trips that I took to the Himalayas mountains. I think each of us have our own filling the well thing, right? I mean, I have my niece. I absolutely love spending time with her, right? That just gives me joy that's immeasurable. I think all of you have kids. You may have the same thing from. I love children. The other thing is nature, right? Between these two, I tend to get restless if I don't get one of these two things over a period of time. The other part which is related is setting boundaries. I think setting boundaries over the course of time, what I have found is it's about communication largely, right? I think for example, just this 2 weeks, I mean, a few weeks ago, actually, somebody from my team, because we work in Bangalore, we work with Seattle teams. There's a lot of night meetings that happens because I know a lot of our customers sit in Seattle, so we try to limit it. We have put in team norms that say, hey, let's just we'll share the night load. We'll only have night meetings twice a week. And if people are not comfortable, they don't have to join it because we'll send out notes in advance. We'll try to do asynchronous communication. So this is something that we have very intentionally started setting. I'm not saying it's easy because a lot of times people themselves are comfortable working nights. I have an engineer who works nights. She sleeps during the day. So because writing code is in some ways a creative activities, many people have their own preferences, and in some cases you can sort of adjust to those preferences, and wherever you can, you try and accommodate that. But I think the work-life harmony, at least for me, all through these years, what I have found is that as long as I am communicating, as long as I am speaking up when something is not outside my comfort zone, I usually can. There are very few times when I've had to work outside my comfort level. Right? I mean, there are always times at work when you have to, like Q4 peaks at Amazon was famous for taking away all your time, and that's actually reduced incredibly over the years because we have managed to get our act together. Uh, but now it's more a matter of making sure that you don't feel obligated to go beyond what you're comfortable with. Like I said, this engineer who reached out to me, who told me, hey, I have these, I've been getting these three projects that I keep having to do, but it keeps cutting into my both my family time, and I'm context switching a lot, which is not making me very productive. It was very easy to fix that situation once he told me what the problem was. Right, we just basically said, okay, you shouldn't be context switching. Let's just assign these 2 days for this project A and these 2 days for project B, and it actually works out because that was a situation. And let's make sure that you start the day late so that you have some time to spend, no overlap into the Seattle times, and that was fine. So it was a very easy fix once we knew how to work it out, and that's what I have found over the years managing teams, that that a lot of the work-life harmony is it's driven a lot of it from yourself, and of course the organization, but the organization is also very supportive in that if you actually speak up. I mean, again, like the comes back to the half backbone discussion. I suppose it's like making sure that you speak up if something is outside your comfort zone. I think I'm slightly over time, but I'm going to discuss this one last story and then I'm done. I think this is one thing that is sort of my personal, I guess, favorite over the years. This is the quote I have on my fridge, right? Because if you're going through hell, keep going. I think all of us at different points in time. Again, I don't know the profile of this audience here. We all feel like giving up at some point or the other. I have. There are times when you feel like quitting. Because things are getting too hard. I think it's very important to know the difference between when to quit and when to stick. I read this, if people haven't, you should read the Seth Godin's book called The Dip, which actually explains this very nicely. But that's a reason. But uh, 3 years ago, I had there are different turning points in everybody's lives. Mine was when my mother had a stroke 3 years ago. It was 2 days before Amazon Go's first public launch day, I remember, and we were all ready. It was completely unexpected, and it changed my life completely. Right, I was in Seattle. That triggered my move to Bangalore, and I thought I had to quit. That was the one time when it seemed obvious that I couldn't manage what was needed for my mother, and no, it was a massive stroke, and it would take years to heal. So all of us flexed, right? My entire family had to change their no, the way of working. But what I really really appreciated was the way my management and my team stepped in. They were incredibly supportive through this journey, right? So I had to be here for a long part of the 2018. But when I was considering moving, basically moving to full time caregiver mode, I was given the option to start the team in Bangalore to set up the engineering team here. And as I said, the rest is sort of history. Like I started doing that, and now no, we managed to work out a situation that had me be close to my mother as well as bring up, as well as continue to do my work, which I was enjoying my work. I loved my work. I didn't want to leave it. But given a choice between my mother and work, I would definitely pick my mom. So the fact that I was given that choice, and that I could do it is something that wouldn't have happened again if I hadn't just kept going, a day at a time. Again, it was one of the advice that I got from one of the allies and sponsors I mentioned in the previous slide. Is it's just basically listening to people who told me, you just have to stick it out for one more day, and just give it time, and this will pass, and things will get easier. And it was true. I think time made it better, and no, I could handle both. And now yeah, I'm here talking to you all. So I think that was all the stories I had to share. I think we are at time as well. So yeah, I just want to end by thanking everybody in my life who actually got me to this point, and thanking all of you for listening. I see a few questions, so I'm going to try and answer these questions. The first one is from Dheeraj. I have completed my graduation in Bachelor's of Computer Application. Is it better to do masters or do I join a job? That's an interesting question. I mean, I know what I did. Uh, I did take a job for 6 months, but then I decided I wanted to do my masters. Um, but largely the masters was because I was doing it outside of the country and I wanted to get exposed to the education system outside. I think there's something that what I normally tell people in today's world though is that I tell people that they should get job experience for at least a couple of years, especially if you have graduated in India, at least as like I did. I know that we have zero exposure, almost zero exposure to how the working world operates unless you have been in a institute that allows for long internships. It's very hard to know how you operate in a job environment. I think getting that 2 years of work experience is usually very valuable for you to even figure out what to do your master's in. You might find that you like something else, and you might actually find that you want to do a course that blends management with computer science, or you may discover a different how do you put it field that you discover while you're working. Who knows? Machine learning is a big thing these days, and you may find yourself enjoying it. So I actually think that after you've gotten your graduation, working for a couple of years just to get a little bit more exposure to the real world helps before you go down the master's route. I'm sure you know this. For an MBA, it's actually a requirement, right? So MBAs, we actually say that you need 3 to 5 years of experience. We have to apply to any MBA schools, at least abroad. And I think there's a reason for that. At least I'm a big believer in getting some experience before before you go do a master's. Even though I didn't do that myself, I think that's my learning at least. Second question, do you have communities within Amazon to drive initiatives or special programs for a diverse and inclusive culture? Yeah, actually, I mean, there's lots. I mean, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion sort of organization, both across worldwide Amazon as well as within each organization. And I can tell you about my own organization. We have a DI peer program manager who drives initiatives that cuts across our organization. In India, we have Amazon Women in Engineering that actually drives a lot of community related events and activities. They actually a lot of these events sort of bubbled up, especially as the Women's Day was this week. We did a lot of things this week to highlight the theme for this week was challenge, champion, change. I was supposed to use that, forgot. And and we had a lot of activities driven by many of these communities. It's not one; it's actually many communities that actually come together for diversity and inclusion. It's also weird not being able to ask, did I answer your question? Did I answer your question? I hope I did. All right, let's see. Maria, women face unique challenges. How can we strike a balance between personal and professional life? Any tips for being successful? Yeah, I think the most important thing, like I was mentioning in the very end, is communication. I think you draw your boundaries, but make sure you have an honest and open communication with your management. I think that's actually what will help in the professional growth. I think picking uh, I hope women don't have to pick one over the other, right? The personal over professional. We have so for instance, there was a time when, if you have babies, we didn't have if you have kids, you get a career break. Now Amazon has a rekindle program that actually encourages women who have been on a break to come back, and actually give them a chance to slowly phase into Amazon. It's called something different in the US. I forget the name, but it's a program where you can actually because a lot of women who have been on a break find that they need some time to ramp back into the professional no professional world, and we actually give that opportunity to do that. We say we phase in people at 20%, 30%, and that's actually a great way to make sure that you can actually take the breaks you need for your personal life, as well as make sure your professional development doesn't hinder. But a lot of these things are, in my mind, driven by communication. I think it's a matter of having a chat with your manager, telling them what you need, and making sure you get what you want. Right? I have people in my I know people in my life at Amazon who have chosen to do part-time work so that they can take care of their special needs kids and still being able to work. People even before this pandemic came and everybody went remote. A lot of people who chose to work remotely because that is what worked out for them. But it was and when requests are made, you actually make that happen. So I think it's a matter of just making sure that it starts with you figuring out again, what you need, and not be shy about asking for what you need. I think it may be easier said than done, I know, but that's really what I have found is the number one thing. I think a lot of times we make the assumption that we won't get what we need, but you will not know until you ask. I think that's what I found. The next question is your thoughts on diversity and inclusion. How do you make sure everyone in the team feel included? I think that's again my thoughts on diversity and inclusion. I think it's one of those large questions, but I believe, I mean, the only right answer here is that it's something that all of us have to very mindfully and intentionally be doing at every part of our life. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a Women's Day thing. It's an everyday thing. And the way I personally feel, make sure. So we have, like I mentioned the culture of inclusion at Amazon through all these programs, but a few years ago, I think we started driving actual sessions with everybody at Amazon on teaching them what inclusion actually means, right? So, for instance, if a sub, I mean, in our case, one of the things very relevant to me, for instance, is we are working remote. There are a lot of unconscious bias that's in people that even we don't know that we have this bias, which is why we call it unconscious bias. One thing is distance bias, right? If you're not if you're not in the meeting room, you'll be forgotten. That's actually a real bias. So we tried counteracting that by putting clocks in the conference rooms that actually had no clocks of all the locations that we had. We made sure that people who were calling in remotely would actually get the chance to speak out first, so that the people in the room would remember that they are actually on the call. We made sure we signed off by asking the people in the remote areas to actually speak up or get on video, so that they are there and we actually watch them while in the meeting room. So that's just one example of making sure that we watch out for people who are not part of no you're who are not part of your immediate culture. But this is such a large question. I mean, this is it comes in every, so every funnel, like starting from hiring to the team mix that you actually want to build, to the norms that you build in the team, to what you deliver, the product that you have, to making sure that it actually includes accessibility feature. I mean, there's just so many aspects of this. I think the only way that we can get, I think the only answer to this is like making sure that you're aware of it, that you're building standards that are communicated to everyone consistently, so that everybody knows that this is what inclusion means, and to keep reminding people, because this is something that is like we have such a long way to go, that I think the only way to do this is to make sure that you become that ally, right? You actually speak up if you see something. You're not silent, right? You speak up for others if you see that something is happening that is going against the notion of inclusion and diversity, basically. At least that's what we do in that's what we have done in our organization. The sponsorship program that I said we started was actually specifically started for something like this, right? So a sponsor is someone who actually plays the role of a manager. So if someone is uncomfortable in, let's say, a manager setting, we wanted to give them a backup support, which is what a sponsor does. And we made it mandatory for every female employee to have a sponsor. That's again one mechanism for us to say, let's make sure that we are interrupting any sort of situations that are happening that we may not be aware of. But there are many things that people can do, that people are doing by building communities, by holding. I mean, I think community building is one thing that will actually help. But just having a community where you can bring up these topics, discuss the topics, and then resolve anything that can happen. Just raising the voice. I think that's the most important thing. Sorry, I was. All right. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, I forgot that part. Mm. My interview with Amazon is in a few days. Any tips for me? I think we must have like recruiters on the call. They should answer this question. I think the main thing I would say for interviewing with Amazon is just making sure that you take a look at the leadership principles for sure, right? And see if you have any stories, regarding that resonates with you, just so that you know that you're coming in with those, and functionally being able to actually deliver all the answer the questions that are being asked of. I think that would be the two things I would say, that any Amazon interview is a combination of both functional competencies as well as how well you sort of fit into the leadership culture at Amazon, and that's actually we reflect that using the leadership principles. It's actually out there. I'm sure there's a lot of resources also in the Amazon jobs page, which about leadership principles. You should definitely take a look at that too, and ask questions of your recruiter. Just get a sense of what job you're applying for, what the team is that you're interviewing with. I think that helps. What is the scope of machine learning in India? That's a large question. I think it's huge. I think machine learning scope is huge anywhere in the world. I think we are applying it to every single thing in every imaginable way. I think yeah, the answer to machine learning is, as of now, I think Amazon. I can't think of any organization that doesn't have an element of machine learning, either in their current roadmap or in their future roadmap, right? Our team, I mean, in our org, we are almost entirely reliant on machine learning to do what we do. Besides, of course, when we have software, we have machine learning. The two things go hand in hand. But it's a very core part of how we do what we do, how we are able to do what we do. In other words, Amazon Go wouldn't exist without machine learning, and I think that's true now of a lot of products. Yeah, in terms of scope, I think it's immense. I think machine learning is just basically kicking off. I think that's true of anywhere in the world, particularly in India. I think that's all the questions we are taking as of now. So thank you. Thanks everyone. Um, I hope everybody got something out of it, or if you don't, I hope you're. I don't know whether there's a way to get feedback, but thanks again for joining in, and have a good weekend. Thank you.